Most people don't lose money because the market failed them, they lose it because fear and impatience convince them to abandon logic at precisely the wrong moment. If you value disciplined thinking over quick fixes and empty promises, consider subscribing to this channel. You know, there's something almost disappointing about the truth behind building real wealth. People spend their entire lives searching for the secret formula, the hidden advantage, the lucky break that will transform everything overnight. They want to believe that somewhere out there, a genius moment awaits them, ready to unlock financial freedom in an instant. But the reality is far less dramatic and infinitely more powerful. The decision that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who spend decades chasing it doesn't cost millions of dollars. It doesn't require insider knowledge or a prestigious degree from an elite institution. It costs about $1 and a willingness to think differently about what money actually represents in your life. When you're young, or even when you're starting to rebuild after financial mistakes in your 40s or 50s, there's this overwhelming temptation to focus entirely on income. Everyone around you talks about doubling their salary, landing the big promotion, finding the side hustle that finally pays off. And yes, income matters. Nobody can build wealth without some form of income. But what matters infinitely more is how you think about that income once you have it. Every dollar that enters your life carries within it a choice that will echo for decades. You can spend it to create the appearance of success, to look like you've made it, to keep up with neighbors and colleagues who seem to have it all figured out. Or you can invest it, not just in stocks or real estate, but in the one asset that compounds faster than anything else, your own capacity to think clearly, to learn deeply, and to make better decisions over time. The moment you stop asking, can I afford this, and start asking, will this make me smarter, stronger, more capable, something fundamental shifts inside your brain. You're no longer making financial decisions based on impulse or social pressure or keeping up with some imaginary standard. You're making them based on whether they serve your future self or merely satisfy your present emotions. That shift, that seemingly small adjustment in perspective, creates a mental habit that becomes the foundation of everything else. Because here's what most people never realize until it's too late, the compounding of knowledge is worth far more than the compounding of capital. One creates the other. Knowledge teaches you where to put your money, when to be patient, when to act, and most importantly, when to do absolutely nothing while everyone around you panics. Most people never tap into their greatest power, and it's not money, it's not talent, it's not even intelligence in the traditional sense. It's time. The first real lesson of wealth, the one that separates those who build something lasting from those who remain stuck in an endless cycle of starting over, is learning to think in decades while everyone else thinks in days. Our culture has become completely addicted to speed. We want quick returns, viral moments, instant transformations that magically multiply our results without the boring, unglamorous work of patience. But that kind of thinking destroys the very foundation of long-term success. It trains your brain to expect immediate rewards, and when those rewards don't come fast enough, you quit and chase the next shiny thing. This pattern repeats for 30, 40, even 50 years, and people wonder why they never built anything that lasted. What financial mistake taught you your most painful lesson? Share it below, because honest reflection is where real learning begins. The difference between those who build something enduring and those who fade into financial mediocrity lies in one simple truth that nobody wants to hear: real growth compounds slowly. Patience is not about sitting around aimlessly hoping something good happens. It's about deliberately holding back when the crowd rushes forward. It's about understanding that great results take time to mature, just like great trees take years to bear fruit. A person who can delay gratification, who can control that burning desire for immediate validation, automatically steps into the minority of people who win by doing less but thinking more. This is not a romantic idea. This is a survival strategy. Every decision you make carries the weight of time. Those who look beyond the next quarter, beyond the next paycheck, beyond the next election cycle, begin to see hidden layers of opportunity that others completely miss because they're too busy reacting to noise. When someone evaluates a potential investment, whether it's a company, a property, or even a career change, they often ask how much money it will generate this year. But the real question, the one that actually determines long-term success, should be what this investment will become in 10 years. The same principle applies to your habits, your relationships, and your knowledge. Most people dramatically underestimate what they can achieve in a decade and wildly overestimate what they can accomplish in a month. The mind trained to see the long game develops patience as an instinct. It stops reacting emotionally to every market fluctuation, every news headline, every social media post designed to trigger fear or greed. Instead, it starts anticipating, building conviction so strong that temporary noise cannot shake it. People often confuse patience with inaction, and this confusion costs them dearly. They assume that waiting means doing nothing, that patience is passive. But true patience is intensely active. It involves constant observation, careful analysis, and quiet preparation. It's the discipline to stand perfectly still while others chase illusions. Imagine a professional investor who sits on cash while everyone around them is buying into hype, convinced that this time is different, that the rules have changed. To the impatient eye, sitting on cash looks foolish, maybe even cowardly. But when the inevitable storm clears, when fear replaces greed and prices collapse, the patient one steps in and buys quality assets at the lowest point while everyone else is counting their catastrophic losses and swearing they'll never invest again. That's what long-term thinking looks like in real life. It's not laziness or indecision. It's precision timing built on decades of mental discipline. The world rewards those who understand when not to act just as richly as it rewards those who act decisively. There's another reason long-term thinkers dominate over time. They understand compounding at a cellular level. Compounding simply does not work for people who quit too soon. Whether it's money, skills, relationships, or reputation, the exponential benefits come at the end, not the beginning. It's exactly like watching grass grow. You see absolutely nothing for months, then suddenly growth appears everywhere at once. Most people give up right before that inflection point arrives because they expect visible progress too quickly. Our brains are wired for immediate feedback, but wealth building operates on a completely different timeline. Long-term thinkers know that invisible progress is still progress. They trust the process because they have internalized the mathematical logic of time. When you make decisions that are designed to pay off over years instead of minutes, you stop competing with others and start competing with your past self. That kind of competition never ends badly because you're always learning, always improving, always building on what came before. Every major success story, when you strip away the mythology and examine what actually happened, is built on patience disguised as persistence. The ability to delay rewards, to endure boredom, to keep showing up when nothing seems to be happening, transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes over time. Consider this: a person who invests in their mind daily, who reads relentlessly, who observes the world with genuine curiosity, might not see any results this week or this year. But 10 years later, that accumulated knowledge has transformed into something far more valuable than intelligence. It becomes judgment. And judgment, the ability to make sound decisions under uncertainty, is infinitely rarer than raw intelligence. The world doesn't need more smart people. It desperately needs more patient thinkers who can connect small dots over long periods, who can see patterns that take years to fully emerge. The people who succeed over time aren't necessarily the fastest or the strongest or even the most brilliant. They're the ones who can stay consistent long after enthusiasm fades, long after the initial excitement wears off, long after everyone else has moved on to the next big thing. This is why the first principle of a truly wealthy mindset begins with mastering time itself. It's about consciously choosing to think ahead when everyone else reacts to the present. It's about saying no far more often than you say yes, understanding that every yes you give today represents a loan against your future attention. If you give too many yes, you end up broke in energy, clarity, and time, the three resources that actually matter. Thinking long-term means protecting your focus as fiercely as you protect your money, maybe even more fiercely. It means avoiding the overwhelming temptation to trade lasting growth for short-lived excitement. Our modern world is specifically designed to distract you, to fragment your attention, to keep you in a constant state of reaction. But the disciplined thinker is designed to ignore it. You simply cannot build greatness in the noise of constant urgency. You cannot make sound decisions when you're drowning in information and starving for wisdom. Now, building upon this foundation of long-term thinking comes the second principle that most people never discover: inversion, the habit of thinking backward. Most people start every problem by asking how to succeed. Very few ever ask the more important question: how do I avoid failure? Yet avoiding stupidity is often dramatically easier and far more reliable than chasing brilliance. If you want to stay out of trouble financially, emotionally, and professionally, start by carefully identifying what causes trouble in the first place. The world is absolutely full of examples of what not to do. People ruin their lives through envy, arrogance, greed, and willful ignorance. These mistakes repeat generation after generation, century after century, because they appeal directly to human emotion. By simply studying failure, by becoming a student of what destroys wealth rather than what creates it, you eliminate about half the risk of life. You don't have to predict an uncertain future when you know exactly what to avoid in the present. Inversion fundamentally changes how you view problems. Instead of asking how to become rich, ask yourself what specific habits keep people poor. Instead of asking how to be happy, examine what choices consistently make people miserable. Instead of asking how to succeed, study what failures destroy success before it even has a chance to compound. You will discover something remarkable: most problems solve themselves when you simply stop creating new ones. Avoiding stupidity has built more lasting fortunes than chasing cleverness ever could. That's because intelligence, especially the kind that gets praised in schools and celebrated in media, can sometimes blind you with unnecessary complexity. Meanwhile, simple avoidance protects you through common sense, through timeless principles that don't change regardless of technology or market conditions. It's far easier to step over a mistake you never made than to spend years, sometimes decades, recovering from one that cost you everything. The habit of thinking backward gives you a calm, rational edge in a world obsessed with addition, with doing more, with constant activity. While others focus on adding strategies, you focus on removing what doesn't work. You stop running in exhausting circles and start clearing an efficient path forward. Inversion is like cleaning the windshield of your mind. Suddenly you can see clearly, and clarity always outperforms chaos. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of subtraction in their lives. They genuinely believe success is about doing more, earning more, acquiring more, optimizing every minute of every day. But in truth, real progress often begins with less. Less distraction, less arrogance, less impulsiveness, less need to prove yourself to people whose opinions don't actually matter. The fewer unforced errors you make, the more room there is for compounding to work steadily in your favor. Avoiding stupidity also teaches genuine humility, the kind that protects wealth rather than undermines confidence. It reminds you constantly that the world punishes overconfidence without mercy. You can make 9 brilliant decisions in a row, build substantial wealth, earn a reputation for wisdom, and then lose absolutely everything on the 10th decision if you let arrogance drive your choices. The best way to stay rational, to keep your judgment clear, is to constantly ask yourself what could go wrong. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. A pilot doesn't fly by naively assuming good weather. He prepares meticulously for turbulence so that when it inevitably comes, he doesn't panic and make fatal errors. The exact same mindset applies to life and investing. Always build a substantial margin of safety into your thinking. Assume that you will be wrong sometimes, because you absolutely will be, and design your entire system so those inevitable mistakes don't destroy you. Inversion also applies powerfully to human behavior. If you know that envy destroys inner peace, avoid comparing yourself constantly to others. If you know that greed blinds judgment and makes you vulnerable to scams, consciously learn contentment with what you have while still pursuing growth. If you know that ignorance invites catastrophic loss, commit to never stopping your education. Every negative has a mirror image that can guide you toward better decisions. The moment you flip your perspective, you begin to see truth where others see only confusion. People chase success through endless addition, accumulating strategies and tactics and information. But wisdom often lies in subtraction, in removing what doesn't work. Remove the behaviors that consistently cause misery, and happiness finds its way to you naturally. Remove the habits that inevitably cause failure, and success becomes almost inevitable. It's not magic. It's mathematics. The power of these two principles working together creates what can only be described as a mental fortress. Long-term thinking gives you patience, the ability to wait for the right opportunity without forcing action. Inversion gives you protection, the ability to avoid catastrophic mistakes that would destroy everything you've patiently built. One helps you build wealth brick by brick. The other helps you preserve it during the storms that inevitably come. Together they form the foundation of sound judgment that lasts for decades. The long-term thinker is never in a destructive hurry, never panicking at the first sign of trouble. The inverted thinker is never genuinely surprised by setbacks because they've already thought through what could go wrong. This combination allows you to move slowly but surely toward the kind of success that lasts for decades rather than evaporating in moments of crisis. Every dollar you save, every decision you make, every day you show up becomes part of a much bigger story that grows quietly in the background. And while others frantically chase noise, desperately trying to catch every trend, you're building real value that whispers at first but echoes forever. Now we come to perhaps the most important insight of all: the real compounding power in life doesn't actually come from money itself. It comes from knowledge. The third principle of building lasting wealth is the unwavering commitment to lifelong learning. Most people stop genuinely learning the moment they leave formal education. They might consume information, scroll through news feeds, watch videos, but they're not actually learning in any meaningful sense. They've switched from growth mode to maintenance mode, and that switch guarantees they'll be left behind. The truth that nobody wants to accept is that school, whether high school or university, is only the beginning. The world changes every single day. The person who keeps learning is the person who keeps winning. Knowledge doesn't have diminishing returns like so many other things in life. It has accelerating returns. The more you know, the faster you can learn new things because you have mental frameworks to plug new information into. Your judgment becomes sharper, your decisions become clearer, your ability to spot opportunities increases exponentially. The problem is that most people confuse information consumption with actual knowledge. They scroll through headlines and opinions all day, exposing themselves to thousands of data points, but never stop long enough to think deeply about what they've read. Real learning happens when you slow down enough to connect ideas, to see patterns, to understand principles rather than just memorizing facts. Every truly great thinker, every person who has built something meaningful that lasted, has one thing in common: they are relentless readers. They understand that reading is not about collecting words or appearing intellectual. It's about systematically sharpening your perspective. A well-written book gives you decades of someone else's hard-won experience compressed into a few focused hours. That kind of leverage doesn't exist anywhere else. No seminar, no podcast, no video course can replace the depth that comes from sustained reading. Reading builds what are called mental models, and mental models are the fundamental tools of intelligent decision-making. The more models you have active in your mind, the better you become at seeing reality from multiple angles rather than just one narrow perspective. Most failures in business, investing, and life happen because people use a single lens to view genuinely complex problems. They make critical decisions based on limited experience instead of broad understanding. By studying across multiple disciplines, economics, psychology, biology, history, physics, you begin to see that the same handful of principles govern almost everything. You realize that the patterns of human behavior repeat across centuries and cultures, and those who recognize these patterns early position themselves miles ahead of everyone else. The habit of lifelong learning cannot be built overnight. It requires something our culture desperately lacks: intellectual humility, the willingness to admit how astonishingly little you actually know. Most people are far too busy trying to appear smart, to defend their existing beliefs, to win arguments on social media, to actually become genuinely smarter. But the truth is that your mind is exactly like a muscle. It grows only when you stretch it beyond comfort, when you expose it to ideas that challenge your assumptions. The goal is never to memorize isolated facts, which change constantly and become obsolete. The goal is to understand underlying principles, which don't change and can be applied across infinite situations. When you make learning a daily routine instead of an occasional activity reserved for crises, you start building what can only be described as invisible capital. It's the kind of capital that doesn't show up on any balance sheet, that your neighbors can't see, that doesn't impress anyone at parties. But it pays dividends for the rest of your life. One of the most powerful habits, one that almost nobody practices, is consciously revisiting what you already know. People chase new information obsessively because it feels exciting, because novelty triggers dopamine. But real wisdom often comes from reflecting deeply on what you've already learned and applying it better, more consistently, more intelligently. Knowledge without application is like compound interest that never actually compounds. It's potential energy that never converts to kinetic energy. The best learners are not those who know the most random facts. They're the people who can powerfully connect knowledge to action. They don't just read about successful investment strategies or time-tested business principles. They practice these principles daily. They make mistakes, analyze those mistakes without ego, and adjust their approach. The process may seem painfully slow, especially in a culture that celebrates overnight success. But over time, over years and decades, it creates a kind of mental strength that absolutely nobody can fake. The person who learns consistently for 10 years will always, without exception, outperform the person who studies intensely hard for a few months and then quits. Another absolutely key part of lifelong learning is maintaining genuine curiosity. Curiosity is the fuel of intelligence. It makes you question comfortable assumptions, dig deeper into problems than surface-level understanding, and see opportunities that others overlook completely. Curiosity transforms ordinary experiences into profound lessons. A curious mind asks why something works the way it does, not just whether it works. That single question separates independent thinkers from passive followers who simply accept what they're told. In a world almost entirely obsessed with appearances, with looking successful rather than being competent, curiosity focuses ruthlessly on understanding rather than performing. It turns every conversation, every mistake, every casual observation into a potential classroom. The person who remains genuinely curious at 50 will dramatically outthink the person who stopped questioning at 25. Curiosity keeps your mind alive and flexible long after youth fades. But knowledge alone, sitting and used in your head, is not enough. Without discipline to apply it consistently, knowledge is just potential energy waiting to be wasted. Which of Charlie Munger's principles do you find hardest to apply consistently? Let's discuss this honestly in the comments. We're all working on becoming better thinkers. The fourth principle of building lasting wealth is discipline, that rare ability to stay rational and consistent when emotions run absolutely wild. Discipline is not about being cold, robotic, or emotionless. It's about controlling yourself when it matters most, when your instincts are screaming at you to do something stupid. In business, in investing, and in life itself, discipline is the bridge between good intentions and actual results. Everyone knows what they should do. Only a tiny fraction have the strength to do it consistently, especially when it's uncomfortable. Success is rarely about brilliance or genius. It's about the boring repetition of good decisions made over years and decades. In a world completely driven by instant gratification, where you can have almost anything delivered in hours, discipline has become a massive competitive advantage. When everyone else reacts emotionally to headlines and market movements, the disciplined thinker stays calm. They understand that panic and greed are simply two sides of the same coin, and both lead directly to poor choices. Discipline allows you to step back when others are rushing in, to wait patiently for the right opportunity instead of desperately forcing one. It's not exciting. It doesn't make good stories at dinner parties. But it's incredibly effective over time. The disciplined person deliberately avoids drama and focuses entirely on process. They build habits that protect them from their own worst impulses. Every great investor, entrepreneur, or leader eventually learns that success is not about predicting an uncertain future. It's about sticking to principles that work over time, regardless of temporary conditions. The challenge with discipline, the reason so few people develop it, is that it doesn't show immediate rewards. It often feels boring, repetitive, and unrewarding in the short term. But just like compounding, its effects are invisible until they suddenly explode into view. A person who practices small disciplines daily, saving a percentage of every paycheck, reading for an hour before bed, exercising consistently, thinking clearly before reacting, might not see any progress today or this month. But in 10 years, that accumulated discipline becomes the unshakable foundation of their power. Meanwhile, the undisciplined person keeps restarting, chasing the next shiny thing, the next get-rich-quick scheme, never realizing that their constant restarts are precisely what prevent real growth. Discipline is what allows you to play the long game without being constantly distracted by the short one. The most disciplined minds have learned to detach emotion from decision-making. This doesn't mean they lack passion or don't care. It means they absolutely refuse to let passion cloud judgment during critical moments. When markets crash and everyone is selling in panic, the disciplined thinker doesn't automatically panic with them. When opportunities look absolutely irresistible and everyone is buying with borrowed money, they don't rush. They analyze carefully. They verify independently. And they act based on cold logic, not social pressure or hype. That kind of emotional composure takes years, sometimes decades, to develop. But once you have it, you become nearly impossible to shake. You no longer get swept away by fear or greed, and that alone puts you far ahead of most people. The ability to stay completely rational when others are emotional is genuinely one of the greatest edges a human being can develop. Another critical part of discipline is consistency. It's not enough to make good choices once in a while, during moments of inspiration. You have to make them repeatedly, day after day, even when you don't feel like it. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility attracts opportunity. People trust the person who stays steady regardless of the environment, who doesn't change their principles based on convenience. The world respects reliability far more than it respects brilliance, because reliability compounds trust over time, and trust is the ultimate currency in business and relationships. Discipline also means knowing exactly what to avoid. Most failures don't come from what we actively do. They come from what we fail to resist. Distractions are everywhere in modern life, deliberately engineered to capture your attention, and every distraction costs something precious. It costs time, focus, energy, the very resources you need to build anything meaningful. The disciplined person understands deeply that saying no is often infinitely more important than saying yes. Every yes must earn its place in your life. Discipline is selective attention, the ability to focus intensely on what truly matters and let go of everything else. Without it, even the most talented mind gets scattered across too many directions and never achieves depth. The final layer of discipline is integrity with yourself. It means doing exactly what you said you would do, even when no one is watching, even when breaking that promise would be easier and more comfortable. That quiet agreement with yourself builds inner confidence that cannot be faked. Each time you follow through on a commitment to yourself, you strengthen your self-respect. That self-respect gradually turns into real power, the power to trust your own judgment, to act without hesitation, to maintain absolute clarity when everyone else doubts. Self-discipline is not about punishment or deprivation. It's about self-respect. The person who masters discipline becomes genuinely unstoppable because they are not at war with themselves. They don't waste energy fighting their own impulses. Their mind and actions are aligned. When you combine lifelong learning with discipline, you create a rare kind of thinker. Knowledge without discipline leads directly to arrogance. Discipline without knowledge leads to rigid thinking that can't adapt. But when you combine the two principles, you get clarity guided by restraint. The learner keeps growing, absorbing new information and perspectives. The disciplined one keeps applying what they've learned consistently. Together they build wisdom that compounds endlessly. The person who learns something valuable every single day and acts on it consistently becomes a genuine force of nature. They don't need luck because they create it systematically through preparation. They don't need motivation because deeply ingrained habits carry them forward automatically. That is the quiet power behind every great success story. Now we arrive at the fifth principle, one that cuts against everything our complex modern world teaches us: simplicity. Most people genuinely believe that success requires elaborate strategies, endless planning, sophisticated systems, and secret formulas known only to insiders. But the truth is that complexity kills clarity. The more complicated something becomes, the easier it is to make catastrophic mistakes. The smartest people throughout history have always been those who could take a genuinely complicated idea and explain it so simply that anyone could understand. Simplicity is not the absence of depth or sophistication. It is the presence of true understanding. When you truly understand something at a fundamental level, you can strip away everything unnecessary and see its essence with perfect clarity. That kind of clarity allows you to make faster, more confident decisions without second-guessing yourself constantly. Complexity is often just a disguise for confusion. It makes people feel intelligent while actually keeping them from seeing simple truths. Simplicity, on the other hand, is brutal honesty with reality. It forces you to confront what really matters and ignore the noise that distracts everyone else. In business, simplicity means focusing relentlessly on what drives actual results and cutting everything else away. Companies fail not because their original ideas are fundamentally bad, but because they try to do too many things at once. They chase every trend, add products nobody asked for, build layers of unnecessary management, and gradually lose sight of their original mission. The best businesses are those that identify one powerful idea and refine it obsessively until it becomes unstoppable. The same principle applies directly to investing. The best investors do not chase hundreds of opportunities simultaneously. They wait patiently for a few clear, understandable businesses and invest with deep conviction. If you cannot explain why something is a genuinely good investment in one clear sentence, you probably don't understand it well enough to trust it with your money. Simplicity creates confidence, and confidence creates consistency. That consistent behavior is what leads to results that last for decades. In life, simplicity means designing systems that are effortlessly easy to follow. Most people fail not because their goals are wrong, but because their systems are far too complicated to sustain over time. They build routines that depend entirely on motivation instead of simple structure. And when motivation inevitably fades, as it always does, everything collapses. Simplicity removes friction from your daily life. It makes good decisions automatic rather than exhausting. It means you don't waste precious mental energy on trivial details, leaving far more focus available for decisions that create the biggest impact. The mind that genuinely values simplicity is remarkably efficient. It knows that willpower and energy are strictly limited resources, so it conserves them carefully for decisions that matter. Every unnecessary choice drains your willpower bit by bit, and every simple system frees it for more important battles. Simplicity also creates deep emotional stability. Complexity breeds constant anxiety because the more variables there are in any system, the less control you feel over outcomes. When you deliberately simplify, you regain a sense of control over your life. You stop reacting frantically to every change and start observing patterns with genuine calmness. The person who understands a few key principles at a profound level can navigate chaos far better than someone who has memorized thousands of surface-level rules. Simplicity doesn't mean ignorance or intellectual laziness. It means wisdom distilled to its purest, most actionable form. It's the ability to look at any situation and immediately see the underlying principle that governs it. When you master that skill, you stop needing endless predictions about the future and start relying on timeless logic. The power of simplicity becomes even clearer when you realize that the world consistently rewards clarity far more than it rewards complexity. Whether you are leading a team, pitching an investment idea, or teaching a difficult concept, the ability to make others understand quickly is the ultimate advantage. People don't naturally follow the smartest leader in the room. They follow the clearest one, the one who can explain where they're going and why it matters. The more simply you can communicate complex ideas, the more people will trust you instinctively. Simplicity builds trust because it signals complete honesty. When you hide behind complicated language and jargon, people naturally suspect you're hiding something or don't really understand what you're talking about. But when you speak plainly, directly, without pretension, you earn immediate respect. That's why simplicity is not just a practical strategy for decision-making. It's a form of integrity. It means you are confident enough in your ideas that you don't need to disguise them behind impressive-sounding complexity. Simplicity also allows you to adapt faster when circumstances change. Complex systems break catastrophically under pressure, but simple systems bend and recover naturally. In our rapidly changing world, resilience comes from clarity, not from elaborate contingency plans. The person who keeps things genuinely simple can pivot easily because they understand exactly what drives their success. They don't waste time and energy protecting weak parts of an overcomplicated strategy. They focus all their attention on the core and keep strengthening it relentlessly. Simplicity creates focus, and focus creates tremendous power. When you know exactly what matters most, you stop scattering your energy across dozens of meaningless activities. You stop chasing everything that looks interesting and start mastering something truly valuable. That is precisely how simplicity builds an edge that complexity can never match. Complexity impresses in the short term but fails in the long term. Simplicity seems boring initially but compounds into unstoppable momentum. If you're starting to see how these principles connect and compound over time, consider subscribing so you never miss insights that could change your financial future. Now comes the sixth principle, the one that holds everything together when times get difficult, the power of character. Character is the invisible foundation beneath every great fortune that actually lasts. Yet it is the one thing people rarely talk about when discussing wealth building. You can build substantial wealth through intelligence, perfect timing, or even pure luck. But you can only keep that wealth, and build upon it for decades, through unshakable character. Without it, success becomes temporary. Money comes and goes, but character determines whether you're still standing when the dust settles. Character is not built during the good times when everything goes right. It is tested and revealed when everything goes catastrophically wrong. It shows itself in moments when taking the easy route, cutting a corner, or compromising your principles would clearly benefit you in the short term. But you choose the harder, more honest path instead. In the long run, across decades, the person who values integrity over convenience always wins because reputation compounds even faster than money. Character gives you credibility, and credibility creates opportunity that money alone cannot buy. People dramatically underestimate how much trust influences every aspect of success. Every major business deal, partnership, or investment ultimately rests on trust between people. You can have the most brilliant idea in the world, backed by perfect analysis and flawless execution plans. But if people don't trust you fundamentally, it means absolutely nothing. Character is what makes others believe in you and support you, even when the numbers are uncertain and the outcome unclear. It is the invisible credit line you earn through years of consistent, honest behavior. Once lost, it's almost impossible to rebuild, no matter how much money you're willing to spend. That's why protecting your reputation should be more important than chasing any short-term gain. The person who lies once has to keep lying endlessly to cover up previous lies. The person who stays rigorously honest never has to remember their story or worry about being exposed. Building genuine character requires constant self-awareness and tremendous restraint. It means learning to control your emotions, your ego, and your greed when they threaten to push you toward poor decisions. The world constantly tempts you to compromise your values for quick rewards. But every compromise, no matter how small it seems, weakens the fundamental structure of who you are as a person. Character means doing the right thing consistently, even when it's personally costly, because you understand that the long-term damage of dishonesty is far greater than any temporary profit. It's not about being perfect, because nobody is. It's about consistency in your values. You will make mistakes, sometimes serious ones. But what ultimately defines you is how you respond when you fail. A person of real character takes full responsibility instead of making excuses or blaming circumstances. They learn from failure instead of hiding it or pretending it didn't happen. Over time, that integrity builds an inner strength that other people can feel instinctively when they interact with you. Character also profoundly influences how you treat people around you. The way you deal with others when you have power says far more about your true character than how you act when you have none. A person of genuine character treats everyone with basic respect, not because of who they are or what they can do for you, but because of who you yourself have chosen to be. Success without character inevitably breeds arrogance and isolation. But success combined with character breeds lasting influence. People naturally follow those they respect deeply, and respect cannot be demanded or purchased. It must be earned painstakingly through years of consistent fairness and authentic humility. In business, character translates directly into reputation, and reputation attracts exactly the right kind of opportunities. The world is absolutely full of people desperately chasing shortcuts and trying to game every system. But those shortcuts come with invisible costs that only become apparent years later. The moment you trade integrity for convenience, you begin losing the trust that took years or even decades to build. The irony is that the most successful people, the ones with real lasting power, don't even need formal contracts to secure deals. Their word alone is enough. That's the ultimate form of power in business, being trusted without question because your track record speaks for itself. That kind of power cannot be bought, cannot be faked, and cannot be manufactured through clever marketing. It's the result of decades of disciplined, honest behavior in situations where dishonesty would have been easier and more profitable. Character also protects you from your own worst impulses. It acts as an internal compass when powerful emotions like fear or greed threaten to pull you off course. In moments of chaos and uncertainty, character reminds you of your fundamental principles. It gives you clarity when confusion surrounds you on every side. When everyone else around you is driven by external rewards and social validation, character keeps you grounded in internal values that don't change. It reminds you that wealth without inner peace is just poverty in disguise. The greatest satisfaction in life doesn't come from what you earn or accumulate. It comes from knowing deep down that you earned it the right way, that you can look yourself in the mirror without shame or regret. The compounding effect of character is subtle but absolutely unstoppable over time. At first, especially when you're young, it seems like honesty slows you down. You watch others cut corners, cheat the system, and rise faster than you.